Welcome to TVBS Meeting Room, where we tackle global issues with a view from Taiwan. I'm your host, Wenqi Yu. May is Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month in the United States. We have a few guests on the show who have been organizing the AAPI community in every corner of society. Since the COVID pandemic and the changing geopolitical landscape, Asians in the world generally feel more vulnerable to attacks and even violence where they are a minority. In the United States, we saw an uptick in hate crimes against Asians. According to the FBI, from 2021 to 2022, crimes against Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders saw the highest increase at 167%. To share ongoing efforts to counter this growing anti-Asian hate, our guest today is Norman Chen, who's the CEO of the Asian American Foundation, TAAF. Welcome, Norman.
Hi, Wenqi. Ni hao. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Norman, so tell us about TAAF. How and why was it founded? What is the movement you're trying to build with some of the most powerful Asian American individuals and groups in the country?
Well, TAAF was founded by several prominent Asian American Pacific Islanders and community leaders right after the 2021 Atlanta spa killings to really address the racism in this country, but also to increase representation and unlock greater resources. Although AAPIs make up 7% of the population in the US, we receive only 0.2% of philanthropy. So it's significantly underfunded. So our mission is to create the national organization to fundamentally transform the future for our community from all sectors: nonprofit, philanthropy, government, corporate, and media entertainment.
Wow, that was a small number, actually much smaller than I had anticipated. But obviously, because of you guys and many others, we see a growing momentum and some good news overnight that the documentary 38 at the Garden about the former NBA champion Jeremy Lin Shuhao, who is hugely popular in Taiwan and currently playing in Taiwan as well, just won an Emmy Award. I know TAAF and yourself have done quite a bit to promote this film as well. And of course, on top of that, Everything Everywhere All at Once and so many more Asia-themed movies, films, and TV shows are bubbling up in the mainstream American media. So it seems like a great time for Asian American representation. Would you say so?
Yes, this is really a historic moment. You know, we love Jeremy Lin. We love 38 at the Garden. We just had a showing this past weekend at Barclays in New York with over 2,000 community members. So in a really exciting time, Michelle Yeoh also attended our annual summit last week in New York. She's the first ever recognized Asian American woman to receive the Best Actor award. Everything Everywhere All at Once was such a triumph after 3 years of anti-Asian hate in this country. And it's so exciting to see AAPIs in stories that appeal to mainstream audiences, right? And are in non-stereotypical roles. There's a great program called Beef on Netflix. So the goal now is to maintain this momentum, as you said, and build more talent, more executive representation, and more support among the studios.
I have to say, what I really like about TAAF's work, and I would say the innovation is compared to past organizations working on AAPI or Asian American issues, you guys have really garnered, I would say, celebrities' power, right? Really leverage those people who have important and influential voice in our media today, and to change the narrative, not only just, based on the work about justice, but it's also about, changing how people talk about and think about Asian Americans. And so while I read your mission, TAAF's mission is to serve the AAPI community in the pursuit of belonging and prosperity that is free from discrimination, slander, and violence. But we also know the root cause is really xenophobia, and often compounded by crises such as the COVID pandemic and, to a certain degree, right, U.S. foreign policy. And so how does TAAF navigate this balancing act, right? You want to demonstrate API's Americanness, loyalty, and patriotism, but you also want to secure and strengthen our ties and heritage to Asia.
Yeah, no, thanks, Wenqi. We do a study every year called the Status Index, status with two A's. And there's one question we asked there, which is, do you think Asian Americans are more loyal to the US or to their home country, if you will, from Asia? And 1/3 of Americans approximately still think that Asian Americans are more loyal to a country in Asia. So they do question our loyalty oftentimes.
So this is a survey for broader than
Yes, so
Asian
it's a survey for all Americans. We actually, over the past 3 years, have interviewed 13,000 people across the country. And this is a consistent finding that people still, a third or a quarter of Americans still feel that we are more loyal to a country in Asia than to the US. So what this touches upon are these three long-standing stereotypes and tropes within American society. The perpetual foreigner, that no matter how many generations you've been here, someone will ask you, where are you from? Oh, I'm from Maryland. No, where are you really from? Oh, I'm from, okay, Baltimore. They want to know, where did your ancestors come from, right? And because they will sometimes never think of you as truly American. And the other second one is the yellow peril, that China is taking over the world and there's a threat from China, which is, of course, happening now. But then that's balanced by this model minority myth, right? Which then looks at Asian Americans as very kind, hardworking, and smart, and sometimes puts us in a divisive way against other communities of color to try to set us apart. So we fight all those stereotypes and tropes, and which is a lot based on ignorance, which requires more education. But to your earlier point, we also celebrate our Asian culture, celebrate our diversity. We are, 50 communities and cultures with over 100 languages, and we love the differences between East Asians, South Asians, Southeast Asians. We celebrate our diversity, but we come together to build economic power, cultural power, and ultimately political power.
And I guess in that process, have you encountered any resistance or even questioning, right? Sort of, okay, why are you guys doing this right now? Obviously, there's the justice and the crime part of it. But was there any suspicion sort of, oh, are you choosing, for example, China over the US? Have you ever been asked this kind of question?
There's certainly challenges by starting a new organization, right? We are coming in, and there have been people who've been doing this fantastic work for decades. And so we are a new player in the space, and that always takes time to build trust. We also have a lot of people from the corporate sector, and sometimes people in the nonprofit sector don't necessarily trust people from the corporate sector. So we're building relationships as well. I think people recognize that, again, we are pan-Asian, and so that we are focusing not just on China and China-related issues, but whatever is better for our overall AAPI community. And so, yeah, overall, we've been really impressed. People have come to us and said, gosh, I've been waiting for more national representation for a long time. We really need this within our community. The Black community has NAACP, the Latino community has Unidos US and other organizations. We have a few national organizations, but they just lack resources, lack recognition. And so we've been seeing tremendous response across all these 5 sectors to bring people together, to innovate, like you said, unlock more resources, and build solidarity.
Well, clearly you've been in this movement for a long time. So before joining TAAF, you also founded another organization, Launch, to address racism and representation issue for the ABI community. It must have been a personal mission of yours. So when did the moment really begin when you felt like the community needed to come together? Long before, the COVID pandemic and the Atlantic Spa massacre.
So, I've been an Asian American my whole life, so I felt passionate about Asian American topics and issues. But most of my career has been in the for-profit sector. I was a venture capitalist. I worked in healthcare. I worked in Asia for 20 years. And it was really the last 3 years when we had this spike in anti-Asian hate that I felt like, instead of doing nonprofit work for other communities, it was time to come back and support our community. And that's what I've been doing, and really passionate. And it's been so exciting to do something for your own community and give back and really see the purpose and the impact that we're having. It's been a wonderful balance between East and West, for profit and not for profit. And I'm really invigorated and excited about the work we're doing now.
And what do you think this round, how is it different?
This round of attacks against Asian Americans.
Well, and, just the movement in general, right?
Yeah, I mean, in 1982, Vincent Chen was killed in Detroit, right? Because people thought he was Japanese American. And there was a spike in anti-Asian activity. And some of the leaders of that time, such as Helen Zia, still remain inspiring to the rest of us today. But there was a little bit of a decline in activity, a few years afterwards. So our goal now is to really bring greater resources, greater movement. And I feel like for the first time ever, we do have the resources. We do have the leadership. We have the next generation. We have social media that really have a historic time to build this momentum. We just announced a $65 million initiative, our portfolio strategy for the next 5 years. Other organizations are doing great work. And I feel like as we are the fastest growing minority in America, we have finally hit that critical mass to build the momentum and really have impact by coming together, working with other groups of color, and then really working to achieve greater impact.
Yeah, I think the resource is really the key this time around. And how much did you guys raise, or the endowment was? I can't remember.
So we started off our campaign 3 years ago with a giving challenge where we asked organizations around the country to tell us how much they were committing to the AAPI community. And through all their commitments, and part of it went to TAAF, over $1.1 billion were raised. Of that, roughly about $150 million is earmarked for TAAF over 5 years. And about half of that is from our board directly. So all of our expenses are really covered by our board members. And all the funding we raise now goes 100% directly to the community. And our goal is to really unlock more resources for our community.
That's amazing. We're chatting about how you lived in Asia for 20 years in Hong Kong, right? And so, that was a really important part of your life experience. So I would say you're truly one of those Asian Americans who's knowledgeable about both worlds. Unlike some, we know those people who kind of, would choose one way or the other. So tell us, how has that Asia experience influenced your thinking and your work right now on building and organizing the AAPI community?
It's had a huge impact, Wenxi. It's really who I am today. Growing up as an ABC, an Asian American, you oftentimes are always searching for your identity. And then you sometimes are asking yourself, well, why am I different from everybody else? Why can't I just be like everyone else in my school? And you don't fully appreciate your culture, your heritage, even though your parents say, be proud that you're Asian, be proud that you're Chinese, right? Go to Chinese school. It wasn't until I then came out to Asia and lived in the majority where I really felt that I belonged. And that sense of belonging is something that our community doesn't feel in the US. 80% of AAPIs in the US do not feel like we truly belong and are accepted in the US. So everyone goes to search for their identity, but not everyone feels like they belong all the time. And what I brought back from Asia is this deep sense of pride and belonging. My kids were born in Asia. So from day one, like many people who are born in Asia, they've been so proud of Asian culture, Asian food, Asian language. And so now when I come back to the US, I am a little bit different. I'm not just from a US perspective. I have that global perspective and know what it's like to really feel like I belong and to live in an environment and a society that celebrates who I am. And that's what we want to bring to the community for all Asian Americans in the US and Pacific Islanders.
Yeah, in some ways, sounds like you found your own identity and have become more confident in who you really are. So since coming back, joining TAAF, what have been the biggest challenges and surprises to you?
Well, on the surprises side, again, as I mentioned, we've been so happy with the power to convene. When we bring together Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, we love to socialize, right? We love to celebrate, love to eat food together. And after COVID, especially, people are just hungry for more social interaction. And so that's been a wonderful surprise. Also, bringing together people with different backgrounds has been fascinating. By having people who are from government meet with people from nonprofits, meet with corporates and media, you're always meeting new and interesting people who all share this common vision to want to help our community. The challenges have been sometimes breaking down these silos, right? People have been working in the spaces for a long time. They've been doing great work. They've been doing this with very few resources for a long time. So here comes a big group with more resources. It's always a kind of a settling in for both ourselves and also for the community. So really breaking down those silos, making people collaborate more, being very inclusive, building trust and relationships, that is taking time. And building coalitions is really important. We've been successful in breaking and having, let's say, Korean Americans and Chinese Americans and Japanese Americans working together, even with South Asians and Southeast Asians. But oftentimes, the biggest divide is between political parties, you know, and the the right and the left. Oftentimes, really struggle to work together, and that's one of our goals, is to try to really work in a bipartisan way.
Can you share a little bit more about that? How you have been able or not to bring the two parties together?
Well, the reality is that within the AAPI community, we have a range, right? We have a lot of people who lean in one direction right now. There's also a significant portion of AAPIs who are also from the Republican side. And so we represent the entire community and really try to work in bipartisan way through all of our work, through anti-hate, through education, through narrative change. And that's really where we're building power, is to say the top priority is to support the AAPI community. Let's come together to really make that successful.
Well, clearly, you know, we've come a long way. And what would you like to see happening in the next decade for you to say, okay, we've actually made progress? And even do we even say, like, we've accomplished something and reached our goals?
Yeah. Our metrics are really focused on our three main objectives, which are more resources, more representation, and less racism, more racial justice. And so we are developing metrics for each of those, right? How many dollars can we unlock? We've announced our $65 million portfolio strategy, but our goal is to find other partners to multiply that, so that become hundreds of millions of dollars. We want to see more representation. So in let's say journalism, right? In newspapers, very few Asian American Pacific Islander names are on the mastheads of major publications. How can we increase that representation? How can we increase representation of AAPIs on boards? Right now, 2/3 of Fortune 1000 companies have 0 AAPIs on their boards, even though we are, you know, a $1.6 trillion buying power. And then just less racism, more sense of safety for our community, fewer incidents and attacks against our community, more appreciation of AAPI culture. These are all things that we are developing metrics to measure so that we can see our progress.
Yeah. Essentially, I think more in your face, right? So once there's more visibility, people are more used to having Asians as, you know, Americans. I think that really changes the conversation. So thank you so much for what you do and what TAAF is doing, and of course for speaking to TVBS Meeting Room today. You know, we celebrate the Asian American Heritage Month in May, but hopefully it's not just this month. I know you've been very busy doing various events. Hopefully it'll be every day in the future. So we'll be rooting for your success, and thank you. Take care.
Thank you, Wenchi. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.